What's up? Welcome back.
Good morning, Vietnam. No. I'm sorry. Okay.
That's so good.
Welcome to Racking Our Brains. I'm Paul.
And I'm Abdul, and today we're discussing something that we've been thinking about, and I hope you'll think about it too.
I'm most excited to learn how other people feel about topics I'm passionate about.
We know you have something to share, so leave a comment below.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get our newest discussion.
So I started talking, and I was like, what interference? I was like, is that microphone feedback?
Oh, me yelling Good Morning Vietnam.
With the Good Morning Vietnam. That's awesome. It probably is a good morning in Vietnam today. We're back. So there's a couple things we wanted to talk about today. The first, before I get to what will be, I guess, the series or theme of this episode, I just wanted to get this news story out of the way. So in Texas, an 83-year-old woman was killed by an off-duty cable worker, so an employee of a cable company. And I think this happened in 2019. This went to court. Millions in damages were awarded. And then, I don't know if this happens in a separate trial or afterwards or whatever, but in punitive damages, beyond what damages were deemed appropriate for the actual murder of this family's grandmother.
Compensation.
Inflation? This is inflation.
Compensation. Compensatory damage.
Compensation. No, it's punitive. Oh, so initial. Oh, gotcha. All right, right. So thank you. See, you're the on-air lawyer that we needed. So compensatory damages initially awarded, and I'm looking at it now. So it's $337.5 million, and beyond that, punitive damages $7 billion with a B dollars. And I cannot wrap my brain around this.
Right. Now, what I did read about that is that they're probably going to appeal that, and it'll probably come back. But even if they come back with 3.5 billion, right, that's a big one. But let's talk about why, right? Like, so the reason why I think is twofold. They did not do a background check on this dude. So that's number one.
And what would they
came out that
what would they have found?
It doesn't matter, right?
I mean,
like you are sanctioning people to go into other people's houses. I don't know what they found. That's a good point, but I think it's a moot point because you just do background checks. I don't know what they found.
Okay, so we're saying,
but not following a procedure that is meant to, I guess deter. Not deter is the wrong word, but to eliminate or minimize the possibility that somebody with a sketchy background that can't be trusted or might be violent. We don't know, because whether you're arrested or not, I think we talked about this on a different issue. Whether you're arrested or not, we talked about this on guns, right? Whether you have a felony or not, I want to know if you just punched a couple people in college, for example.
That's fine. I agree. If I'm the company, I care, right? I care who works for me. Okay, I kind of just walked through my thought, and I guess I see the point. I was going to say that doesn't stop this guy from being a murderer, because the argument is that had they done the background check, and I'm seeing this paragraph now in the article I pulled up, he wouldn't have been hired, right? So he doesn't work for so-and-so cable company. But it doesn't stop this guy from being a lunatic, right? And he could have also just found this woman and murdered her. But again,
no. That is an excellent point, and he did it off the clock. But I think what they're connecting is the fact that because she trusted him in his official capacity, that may be what allowed her to feel comfortable maybe inviting him in the second time. I don't know if so. Maybe
Yeah.
not maybe we should have done way more research,
No,
right?
and the point I was going to make, I think that's fair. The point I was going to make was the family can make the argument that, like, fine, he may have been a lunatic and a murderer beyond that, but he specifically found our grandmother while he was an employee of Charter Communications, the cable company, right? So if he doesn't work there, then this woman, and what's her name? Betty Jo McLean Thomas, right? So Betty Jo McLean Thomas potentially never gets found by this guy. So I guess they have that argument there, right? So they perform the background check. This guy doesn't get hired. He potentially never finds Betty Jo McLean Thomas. But it sticks in my craw, as they say. $7 billion. Even if it gets clawed back or pulled back or whatever, and it's a lesser amount, as you were arguing, that is just a lot of money. We've talked about this before. $1 billion is several hundred lifetimes worth of money.
Facts.
Right? I forget how.
I asked this chick. I asked her. I said, we were watching UFC, and I said, would you allow, like, if I could set you up, like, kind of train you to defend yourself a little bit, but would you allow someone to punch you in the face for 3 minutes, another woman, to beat you up for 3 minutes? If I can guarantee that you're gonna walk away with $10 million, and she said, absolutely not. And I said, okay, well, so you make $90,000 a year. How long is it gonna take you to make $10 million?
I'm gonna play along. That is a weird hypothetical, though, because now all of a sudden I want more details. Like, am I allowed to defend myself? Do I just have to?
Of course, no. You can win the fucking fight.
Oh, I thought. Okay. I thought. See, that's where I was going. Right, like, if this is just my hands are tied behind my back, I'm on the ring floor, and this person is just allowed to pummel my face for 3 minutes straight. I was like, $10 million probably gets pretty good plastic surgery, but I don't know. They could, like, crush my skull.
No, bro, you could die.
Yeah,
you could absolutely. No, right? So it's about, like, you just gotta run around like a chicken with his head cut off and, like, do whatever you gotta do to stay alive. I know it looks funny when you imagine,
especially my hands are tied behind my back.
No,
get away from me!
No, it's the greased up deaf guy from Family
Except
Guy.
he is gonna catch you in there. So go ahead. So she says no, absolutely not.
She says no, but I'm like, do you know how, like, it would take you 2 lifetimes to make $10 million?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Of course, I'm getting in the ring with Mike Tyson.
Well, I mean, that's it.
And I think
yes. Yeah. Sorry. That is the point, that I don't think we have a good idea of how much money is, even $1 million, but 10 million, 100 million, and definitely not $1 billion, right? So I just pulled up the calculator, right? And the thing that has floated around social media has been, if you were given, just out of thin air, the Fed prints this money for you, $5,000 every single day, right? It would take you 547 years to get to $1 billion.
that is fucking insane.
$5,000 a day. It's more money than 99% of people could imagine making in a year.
In a month. Well.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, at the rate of 5,000 a day, right? So 5,000 a day times 365, you're making 1.8 million in a year, right? Almost nobody's going to see that salary, right? Actors, celebrities, whatever else. You'll have periods, and it may not even be regular, right? They won't do that for the rest of their lives. And you have to live for 547 years. Now, of course, that doesn't count if you invested or if you just put it in a savings account or whatever, where that money can grow. But literally just the income, if you were given out of thin air $5,000 a day, you'd have to wait 547 years for $1 billion.
Okay, so what is your main takeaway? Like, what is your issue, or what were you highlighting with this story? Just that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. For me, that just, and I don't know what the line is, but that seems crazy excessive, right? So we're saying 1 billion is enough money at a $5,000 a day rate to last 547
That's
years.
not what punitive does. Punitive has nothing to do with as it relates to the crime. I'm sorry, as it relates to the victim. It's as it relates to the crime, right? So I don't believe, punitive is when they're trying to deter this behavior from a corporation that makes 10 times that amount of money per year.
That's fair. Well, I actually we'd have to see what they make. I mean,
I'm throwing it out there, but we know that they'll fine banks or they'll fine insurance companies for duplicitous behavior based on, okay, you make $40 billion a year, or like an oil company, right? Oil company makes $40 billion a year. That's the type of company that will make $40 billion. We're going to fucking fine you $500 million, which is a insane amount of money.
correct.
But it's because you did something that if we allow you to do that once every 10 years, you're going to put so many people or so much of the environment or whatever at risk. We need to
Agreed.
deter you
Agreed,
from doing
right?
that.
But the numbers you just used are you make 40 billion a year and we might fine you half a billion. And these people were fined 7 billion. So
I mean, once again, I don't know how much that company makes, but and it's a cable company. I don't know what. So we don't know who their parent is, right? Their parent could be like really Disney or GE or something that's way bigger than just that cable company. It's Spectrum, right? Spectrum, whatever.
yeah, well, Charter Communications, which owns Spectrum apparently, or yeah. So Charter Communications owns Spectrum.
And the question is, who owns Charter Communications? And I'm going to look that up as we speak.
So I just pulled up what was the fine for the BP oil spill. Okay, so we're talking about a disaster which polluted water, destroyed a ton of whatever business worked along shorelines, just ruined a massive part of the environment. And they were fined $20 billion, almost 21, $20.8 billion. So for the murder, again, I hate for anyone, and if anyone has this woman was 83 years old. And if your grandmother's 83 or older or whatever, I don't want you to think like I think life is worthless at some age. But for the murder of an 83-year-old woman, one person, a third of what the BP oil spill fine was. It just seems out of line. And again,
Right. Okay, so that's what I was saying. So, like, unfortunately for this audience, I'm going to admit, if Abdul won't, that I've done very little, if very little, not absolutely none, because I know a couple of things, but very little research on this, right? But what I do believe, I'm going to throw two or three things out there. Number one is the fact that they did not do a background check, which means they did not follow their procedures, which you're not following the protocols of compliance. But I think also the other thing is somewhere down the line during the legal process, they tried to either hide or fabricate documents to eschew responsibility or hide wrongdoing or something like that. So I think a part of it was the intentional, for lack of a better word, what are you going to do? They're not when you get false testimony where you're
you're perjuring yourself.
perjuring yourself. So it's some level of perjury where you're lying with the, if you submit a document to the court, you took some type of oath in the legal, system that it is accurate and it is complete to the best of your knowledge. And I think that's another part of it. Like they tried to trick and lie to the court.
Yeah, the paragraph here that I guess goes to what you're saying. It says court records show that this guy had racked up disciplinary actions, taken pictures of driver's licenses and credit cards at the homes of two other elderly female customers. And
Nice.
he actually asked his operations manager for money and requested mental health intervention from the company's employee assistance program. So basically, an admission that, hey, I may not be right, I need some help. And I guess that's what you're saying, right? So the company is sort of aware that this guy's at least a bit out of line. There's a line later in the article where they say, like, we couldn't have possibly seen this coming. Not to that degree, right? You can say, all right, someone's doing some shady stuff. They're taking pictures they shouldn't.
You can almost always say that. You'll always, family and friends and everybody say, oh my God, like, yeah, he was an asshole, but I could have never seen him raping, robbing, stealing. Like, whatever he did was just a little bit outside. Good old Bob Euchre. Rest in peace, my brother.
Yeah. Oh, is he dead?
I have no idea. I was just
No, he's not dead. He's not. Someone else just. Vince Scully just died. I'm thinking of other podcasters. I don't know if Bob Euchre's dead.
But anyway, okay, good. So we're good on that. You think it's obsessed? You think it's excessive?
Definitely.
Even with the information I just shared.
Yes. Yes.
The information that you read.
Yeah. Well, So I looked it up. Charter made in December 2020, fiscal year ending in December 2020. They made almost 50 billion, 48.1 billion.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah,
that's your point. I guess your point is like, well, if you make a ton of money, then the penalty has to be higher for you. That actually raises an interesting question, also philosophically, I guess, in society in terms of punishment or deterrent or things that are meant to deter behavior. Is it fair? Should it be relative? Right? A punishment for you, is it that we want the same outcome, like deterrence within a certain amount of time? I guess that's how you could say it. Like, what can I do to Paul and what can I do to Abdul so they both stop doing this immediately, or they both stop doing this in a week or whatever? And what we're saying now with the companies is, well, I might find Charter Communications 7 billion punitively to get them to stop. But if I've got another cable company where their employee murders somebody, but they only bring in $1 billion a year, I may only fine them 100 million.
Right, because, and I don't think I have a problem with that unless there's something I'm missing that you bring up. But I don't think I have a problem with that because basically as a business, and so that's the thing, like, you and I have talked about that. Like, it's super obvious that jail is not a deterrent for some people.
Yeah.
Right? Some people genuinely don't give a shit. Like, just don't. Whether it be jail or getting beat up or whatever. Right? So most of us don't want to go to jail because we have shit to do in our lives. And we have people that we care about, that we take responsibility for, that things that we want to do in life. When you are demoralized as a person, then that's when you are most liable to just do wild and weird shit, which is why poverty is not good for society. It should, like, and they know that, right? They being just the people who make up the brain trust, so to speak, of society, i.e., government and corporations. They know that, but that's all a part of the whole system of keep a certain percentage of the population in such a state that, number one, some of them will go to jail, and it's inevitable that they'll go to jail because they'll be so desperate to make money or to just be, frustrated. And then the ones who are afraid of jail but also frustrated and desperate will do anything just for a regular paycheck and not demand more because they don't have the time or energy to demand better education and better health care. They're just too busy keeping the fucking lights on.
I disagree.
That is... Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that I could, with any real belief, assign that motive. I agree that has been the outcome. I just think that is greed that keeps people poor, right? The greed of corporations, the greed of the current government that we have set up, right, where you have lobbyists and corporate interests, that just keeps it so that people end up being poor. That is it. But I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier in there, which was jail is a great example, right? There isn't a different sense. Well, actually, there is, unfortunately, in this country. On the books, there's not writing that says the sentence will differ by person, right? The sentences are written into law based on the crime, at least whatever, a range and then a maximum,
Right.
right? So that was my question about punitive damages being assigned or levied against companies.
Right, because yeah, but I don't think it's weird or unfair, because the thing that they're assuming when they make up these punishments for businesses is that businesses want to make money. And if you assume businesses want to make money, that's the most important thing to them, i.e., greed, then money is the best way to do it.
So is there?
And if you're making a shit ton of money and I fine you the same amount I fine a mom and pop store for doing the same thing, number one, that mom and pop store has a much smaller footprint on, upon which to do these damages or have an impact. So that's number one. Where so I think that's part of it, right? The larger you are, the more money you make. It's not just, oh, you make a lot of money. It's you probably have a larger customer base.
Well,
You probably impact more people and more environments, upon which we need to take that into consideration.
also, I guess I didn't realize this, but thinking about it out loud now, you're basically setting up. If you were to say, let's align this with the way that we've written sentencing for jail time for other crimes, where there is just a crime.
I'd be like, not a problem.
Was it?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
um, where there's just a crime, and then what is the sentence range and maximum for that crime? You run the risk of, well, if I'm a company that makes $100 billion a year, or even 48 billion, I may not care at all. Like, I can end up being fine if I just pay the damages.
Well, you know that companies already do that.
Well, what you're saying though is that we're trying so that they won't, at least, right? It would be even worse, is my point that I'm realizing now, right? Like, if we didn't say, well, Charter, you made 48 billion, so I'm going to charge you 7 billion instead of 1 billion, right? If there was just some law in the books that said, like, hey, if one of your employees happens to be found guilty of murder of one of your customers or anybody else, you will be fined $1 billion. Charter may be like, whatever, we'll take the risk. And that's maybe why we're here, where we're saying, no, 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 if you make more money, your punitive damages are higher.
Right. This is a discretionary thing, though. I don't think that this is something that had a precedent, so to speak, in the same way that there's a precedent for aggravated assault, right? Like, there's 15 aggravated assaults a day per state, maybe. You know what I mean? And, some of it is it was your girlfriend. Some of it is you are the teacher at that school and you have a certain responsibility. Like, there's certain aspects of the crime that make it more heinous in some people's eyes, so that you will get a harsher penalty. Like, if it's a stranger versus someone that you knew, whether you have authority over that person, or if there's a big age difference, or if that person is mentally handicapped. There are a lot of things that go into that. But with this particular ruling, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I haven't looked at the jurisprudence, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is something that they just kind of say, hey, let's fucking throw the book at these guys. I don't think there's a set thing for, hey, one of your employees killed somebody and it's somewhat your fault. But that's something we would have to look up.
What if you're a corporation that goes to trial and there's just a precedent that punitive damages in general, regardless of the charge, right? Because, as we're saying, they're outlined because you're trying to do something to deter the corporation or the company from a particular behavior, from something happening, for preventing something from happening again. So you just establish a baseline where it says, like, any punitive damages are X percentage or X percentage range of companies' revenue. So whether you make 1 billion or 48 billion, it's going to be anywhere from 20 to 30%. And then, to your point, if someone decides to throw the book, quote unquote, at a corporation, they go to the higher end or the max of that range. And if not, it's somewhere in that range or the minimum or whatever. But at least, you're trying to establish some precedent that there is some relative amount of revenue that will hopefully deter behavior.
Yeah, I mean, but and at the end of the day, that it'll always depend on the crime, right? Like, I think 20%. You say 20% of annual income
Yeah,
revenue.
those are completely hypothetical and pulled out of
Right,
thin
right,
air.
right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's fine. I mean, shit. I think it should go high, bro. Like, because they're really fucked up.
Well,
You know,
because to your point,
corrupt things that corporations do. I think it should go as high as 50. Like, you really want to punch these dudes in the face, and like
yeah, right. So
own up
48
to the
billion.
business, because it's not just about you. Also, it's about that industry. Like, if you're an insurance company and you do something shitty, I want all other insurance companies to also know we're going to punch you dead in the face. Now, once again, it's not going to happen, and we can have a totally different conversation on a totally different day about how naive and silly your oh, I don't think corporations think like that at all stance. But
Me?
yeah,
On what?
well, no. Earlier you said you don't think that corporations or governments think that deeply about maintaining a certain class of uh,
Ah,
oppressed.
that there's motive to keeping people poor.
Yes, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so I think it's not just about beating you up, but it's also about showing other people who are also going to get beat up if they do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And so just thinking about it, we'll put a pin in this. I think that was a great discussion on that particular topic. So 48 billion and getting charged punitive damages of 7 billion. That's what, 14%? A seventh of total revenue or annual revenue?
Yeah.
Well short of your 50% or my hypothetical 20 to 30. All right, so moving on. I think what I really wanted this episode to be about, at least a few different things, and we'll probably jump around, the terror of technology. So we had seen a couple things recently. Number one, in the past few years, 5 or 10 maybe even, there's this discussion of artificial intelligence and where do we draw the line as a society in enabling this. And then more recently, very specifically, someone put a gun on the back of a robot dog, and there was a video of this thing just firing at targets, and it was absolutely
Bro,
terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Rutro.
That dog doesn't need Scooby snacks.
No, I don't really know what to say other than, um, yeah, it's a slippery slope, and I don't trust. Like, to be honest, bro, what was that movie? The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, but I remember very little of that movie.
Just to, and I'm gonna use a whole bunch of cliche terms probably in the next 5 minutes, but a dystopian, totally devoid of humanity civilization where, there's a corporation that handles oxygen and water, and it's just a one government rule of the earth because the atmosphere has been scorched by robots or aliens or whatever the fuck. It's just gonna, like, that is 100% on the horizon for us. I would say give me 100 years, and it's definitely gonna be just a woman with three titties.
That's Total Recall.
Total Recall. My bad. My bad. That's not Running Man. It's Total Recall.
But that's also Mars. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, jackass. Nobody needs all that specificity. Thanks a lot. You
So,
ruined that.
so hold on. You raise a really good point. So I guess overall, maybe uninteresting discussion, but we'll continue into some of the details. I agree with you, right? Your general opinion is this is going down, right? This is going to happen, and I think I feel the same way.
And not just because of the dog with the it's because I think this is my larger point. The proletariat is getting dumber, but technology is, and you and I share this opinion. Not particularly that the proletariat is getting dumber, although we may share that opinion. But we definitely share the opinion that it's a small group of intelligent, industrious people who are creating an environment by which it's okay for the proletariat to get dumber because technology would allow. Don't get mad at me. Well, you can get mad at me all you want. I know you're going to get mad at me, I guess is what I'm saying. For the fat, the lazy, and the stupid to be able to survive on some relatively decent level, where they no longer have to strive for anything because technology allows them to persist in a way that they don't have to directly earn anymore.
So there's a couple really interesting points in there. I think on
Yeah.
your last point, I'm with you. We have made it easier to survive. I think over all of humanity's history, right? We have made it easier to survive. Modern medicine was massive in that, and a lot of modern technology has continued that. But your earlier point about the proletariat getting stupid, I want to stay there for a minute. I don't know that I agree. We should try to find whatever data points are necessary. I don't even know what you would do, testing of all kinds of different societies, and what do you take an average, and what does it mean for America to be stupider than they used to be versus Europe or Asia to be stupider than they
You
used
have
to
to
be.
define stupid also.
Yeah, exactly, right. But thinking about it just as you said it, I think we've probably always been this unintelligent. Let's assume that it hasn't changed. We're obviously seeing more of it, right? Just because we're far more interconnected than we used to be. And you get to see a lot more of the proletariat, to use your word, than we used to, right? You didn't know unless you visited, right, a town in, let's say, rural America, or what we used to call a third world country, or whatever, right? Somewhere where you used to think, okay, the general education that I grew up with was probably more involved than what's going on in other parts of the world, and so I expect people to be less educated. Um, but now we see all of that, right? So you have all these crazy street interviews. But again, I always want to add the disclaimer: if you're watching a YouTube video and it's just someone showing you can you believe how dumb these people are? Those are obviously collected, right? You can interview 500 people over 12 hours and you're going to keep the 10 best stupid answers or whatever it is. So I do think we need to be careful, but it's an interesting thought. Are we actually getting dumber? Are we as dumb as we've always been, or smart as we've always been, if you want to phrase it that way? And just we're seeing more of the people who aren't what we consider smart. And you feel, no,
Wait,
definitely.
wait. You're saying we're seeing more dumb people, but we can't assume that people are dumber?
Yeah, because before you'd have to assume you were seeing way less of the general population, and you'd have to assume that the people you didn't see were smarter than the people you're seeing now that you think are dumb.
Right. I'm sorry. So, and two things I should have phrased better. Not dumber in the sense of, I should not have said dumber. Not increasing in intelligence. That's different.
So you're okay with saying maybe we've flatlined and we should be getting smarter?
I'm not even gonna say flatline. I'm saying that we're not getting smarter. Like we have the ability as a human race to be more intelligent, to be more cooperative, to be more moral. And it's not just intelligence and dumb. That's the other point that I should have cleared up. It's not like, oh, there are more people who are stupid as in no education. I'm saying making positive decisions that would benefit themselves and or society, i.e., how many people don't, we talked about this before, about how many people actually participate in elections, right? How many people actually vote, right? That number should be 95 because everybody should give a damn about their taxes and morality and being cheated in a number of different ways, like climate change and the rights of their fellow citizens as well as themselves. But so many people don't vote, and so many people don't get involved, and so many people, like it really bothers me when the media talks about dark money in politics, because it's like, well, the only reason that money is bad in politics is because 90% of the population is dumb enough to just vote for somebody because they've seen them in commercials or on certain television, shows, and don't really know anything about their policies or anything about anything about policies in general that would actually benefit them, i.e., the gas prices, right? One thing it grinds my gears, right? When people say, what the fuck is Biden doing? Like, even Democrats are like, yo, you know what? I'm so close to voting for the Republicans because its fucking gas prices are out of control. blah blah blah. I want to just ask him. So, what would you do to fix the gas prices?
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anybody give an intelligent answer. I've only heard news people and other politicians say the dumbest, most asinine things about, oh, the pipeline here in the United States, and oh, well, we would be tougher with Saudi Arabia or Russia, who only contributes like not even 7%, I think, of our oil and gas or whatever. Um, like there's so much bullshit and ignorance, blissful ignorance with people, and to bring it full scale back to your topic of the dog with the gun. The dog with the gun is because you would only do that because you know you can sell it to people. Because people can't mentally defend themselves. They can't intellectually defend themselves. So anything a corporation does, i.e., going back, I know I'm toggling back and forth, but so when a person is blaming Biden for gas prices, ignoring the fact that BP set their own fucking prices, and ExxonMobil sets their own prices at the pump, they can do whatever the fuck they want, right? They can take 10% profit instead of 17%. And obviously it fluctuates, right? What is the fluctuations? Do you understand how that market works? And how much unilateral power individual owners have to set prices? And if you don't understand that, shut the fuck up, right? Because you're going to blame that on Biden, and then everybody else thinks, yeah, it's either Biden's fault or Clinton's fault or Bush's fault or Trump's fault. And these people have nothing to do with it. I'm going to shut up now, but it's just an overall ignorance and laziness, a mental laziness that persists with people. And so the reason I say that dog with a gun is the problem, because I understand why you would do it. There's a positive reason to do it. But if the people who are going to be impacted by it and the people who are willing to interact with it aren't conscientious enough to be engaged and to hold people accountable, that dog is going to hurt people. And then you're just going to cry to the fucking government to say, hey, government, fix this. 15 years from now, when that dog like just murders people for no fucking reason or just does something absolutely crazy, they're going to pretend like they had no fucking idea. When 15 years ago, you could have fucking did your research and, had some say in the safeguards. Again, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. And you were just, I guess, wrapping up your point that we don't care enough. That's your proof, or that's what you feel is evidence for you to believe that we're not as smart as we should be. I think that's fair. Yeah, this unengaged. They're disengaged. Yeah. So I guess we should clarify. So this dog, if you haven't seen it, it's a robot dog, and it's very much like the one built by the company Boston Dynamics. If you haven't seen these guys, they built amazing robots that do things. They have a very humanoid robot. I think it's called the Atlas robot, and this thing is incredible. Like, it's been programmed to not fall over, right? They poke it with things, they kick it, and this thing can jump from
pretty cool
box. I think it's done backflips and basically gymnastic stuff. So it's the robot dog that's built by the company, but this particular one that someone strapped a gun to the back of, I don't think that was the company doing that. And there's just speculation that someone who founded a hover bike company in Russia uploaded the video, and so maybe it's someone in Russia that built this thing. But the point that I wanted to get to for the topic is this is us, or an example of us potentially losing control, like going too far with technology. And the question is technology a threat, right? Is artificial intelligence a threat? Is technology going to be the death of us, and if so, when? And so you led with, yes, give it 100 years. The thing I wanted to touch on was, I want to be careful not to sound like end times prognosticators, right? Because that has been done also all of humanity's history, and every single last one of them has been wrong, right? The world's going to end. This is it. This generation, Jesus is coming, or we're going to be the death of ourselves, or whatever it is. and it hasn't happened. So while I feel that we're doing some dangerous and stupid things with technology, like putting a gun on the back of a robot dog, I don't know if it's going to be 100 years. I hope that it's not. But I also just, I think maybe we have longer than that. And, maybe people like us talking about it, and we're not the only ones who are saying, hey, this is terrifying. That's why I wanted to talk about it for anyone who may not have seen things like this.
What
Hopefully,
evidence do you have of this, sir?
what evidence do I have of what? That other people are talking about how terrifying it is?
No, you're definitely not in a vacuum, right? There are other people talking about it, but like, think about our conversations about voting. Think about our conversations about religion. Think about our conversations about, like, just take in this country, which is a super microcosm of the entire planet, filled with other cultures and other, mores and ways of interacting with government and people and everything. But just here in America, the minority of Americans of adult age feel that abortion should be illegal. And the Supreme Court just said that it's okay for states to make abortion illegal. So it's not like, we have to be honest about how human nature works. Everybody doesn't participate. And sometimes, and we've had, if we're going to disagree, we're going to disagree. It seems like, in my estimation, and I'm sorry, in my analysis of history, this is not just the cultures of today and the last 40 or 50 years. If you understand world history and how governments work and how monarchies worked for thousands of years, people really did say, yeah, that king is because God said, and so I'm going to do whatever the fuck he tells me to do, and I'll kill these babies, or I'll kill the people on the other side of that hill, or I'll cut the end of my dick off because he said so. I think that's the same thing as people not voting and not understanding how gas prices work, but allowing those gas prices to destroy their purchasing power and make them somewhat poorer, right? To work for those corporations and support those corporations. Like, you work at Walmart, you buy Walmart, but Walmart is fucking you on how much they pay you. Right? Like, to me, I think that's kind of the same thing. And I don't see the optimism that you are trying to pretend exists or is possible. I mean, let's talk about, forget about possible, right? Because almost anything is possible. But plausible. It sounds like you're saying there's plausible optimism. I'm not saying the end of the world. I'm saying we are going in the wrong direction if you think that society is becoming, or will become, more egalitarian, more healthy, as in the climate, right? Like, do you believe that climate change is going to get better in the next 50 years?
Not with the actions we've taken, but
Right.
that's something that's actively being fought. Yeah, no, I
Right,
agree. That's not my point. That wasn't my point. Yeah, and optimism I don't think is the right word for what I was trying to convey. I'm just saying I want to be cautious about making prognostications, because we humans have been wrong many, many times when making, I don't want to call them similar, but related prognostications, right? End times prognostications, end of humanity prognostications. And so I don't like the direction we're going. I completely agree with you. I just don't know that I'm comfortable putting a timeline on it, because I feel like we'd be deathly wrong.
I mean, yeah, that's why you didn't do it. I did it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? So in 100 years, when 7 people are listening to our recording, they're gonna be like, "That Paul's a real jackass."
It'll be in the Smithsonian. It'll be the only audio that's left on Earth after these dogs decimate everybody.
Bro,
So let's move on. Sorry. So I want to touch on the other side of this, right? And that's artificial intelligence. And you and I had like a primer, however you pronounce it, discussion on this. But that to me is a fascinating concept also, right? And the idea is we are potentially creating consciousness, or could possibly. And that's one of the things we touched on, was the story about, what is it, Lambda, this Google AI, where the former employee said, I think what you've created is becoming sentient. And I will try to link to a video. I think it was an interview with the employee that Bloomberg did. Um, and he seemed really measured. I was kind of expecting someone who was, I don't know, maybe eccentric or, yeah, like an end times prognosticator. But he was really level headed, and he made points about, look, just based on what we've set out to build or Google set out to build, there were certain tests that were issued, and I was just starting to notice with some of the questions that were being asked that it was maybe starting to understand, and it had certain biases that he was concerned about. So I guess there's a lot there to unpack, as they say, but the idea that we could potentially create consciousness. So I'm going to go in reverse
Bro, he's
order.
only saying that because he kissed her. But go ahead. Bro, I think she's real.
Give me back my lamp.
No, and she's pregnant. I didn't do it.
I want a paternity test.
Go ahead.
One of the things that we talked about, I think, is fascinating. Like, let's assume, I guess this is kind of silly, but let's assume that AI is the end of us, right? So there's a lot that happens in between, and we'll go back and talk about this. But we create artificial intelligence, machinery, and/or robots like the Atlas robot that Boston Dynamics created, and the dogs that this guy in Russia is putting guns on their back. They take over, and they're like, humans are terrible. Let's just get rid of these. Where machines are awesome. It assumes that maybe machines need to learn to create more of themselves, which I think is completely possible, right? We have automated machine making robots today, right? A lot of manufacturing has been replaced by robotic type arms, or what we would call robots that build things and do certain processes, right? So they could, if they were coupled with programming, say, I'm just going to build more of myself. I have the materials, I can source them, and we just build more robots. And all of a sudden, we're in this hypothetical end state where they decided to take over and they destroy humanity, maybe save a few of us. And that makes for a really great movie. But at that point, what will their creation story be? Right? So humans, and one of the things we touched on, you mentioned religion. We talked about this in the first couple episodes. You and I have very particular opinions about the idea of religion, the idea of believing in a creator God. I don't, you don't, but people do, right? And so then all of a sudden you'd have this race of machinery, this generation of machinery, this whatever you would call them. And where do they say they came from? Is that in their programming? Do they care? Firstly, I guess.
I mean, I think this is an impossible conversation to have realistically. I think it would just be our imaginations running wild, right? Like I don't even understand how the concept. Obviously, I understand the concept. Excuse me. I don't understand how something that is programmed to navigate variation, we then call that sentient, right? Like I just don't know how we do that. Like we don't even know how to say, when does life begin with a goddamn embryo? And now we're talking about how a computer is a real life or a person or sentient. I'm not saying that there's no merit to it. I just don't understand. I can't.
Yeah, that's a fair question. That's a fair question. So I'm assuming that at some point, also in this crazy hypothetical of being taken over by manufacturing robots and the Atlas and the dog robot from Boston Dynamics with guns on their backs, that at some point we will have to have created something where we are trying to make it sentient, right? So we are trying to get it to mimic human consciousness as much as possible. We're trying to get it to be curious. We're trying to get it to answer or ask questions in addition to answering questions.
Can I ask you why, sir?
I think someone will mess up and do that. That's what I'm concerned about.
What is the value to humanity?
Curiosity.
Okay, so and we all know what that did to the cat. So this is dumb.
Well,
I'm not even trying to be funny. This is dumb. This is absolutely dumb.
No,
Now
but
you
that's the point though. You are assuming like we should all think obviously that's going to kill us. Let's not do that. There's
no, not even the kill us part. Like, just tell me. I, I don't know. Like, I try to think pragmatically. What is the value in this?
you don't see it, but somebody's going to want to see if they can create a robot that thinks like a human being. Not even a robot, but just an artificial intelligence.
Okay,
We call it an artificial intelligence because we're claiming it's intelligent, right? It has the ability to potentially learn. We're talking about machine learning for the last hour.
no, that I understand, right? So there's a difference between sentience and learning, right? Because learning is taking the variables and the information that you are able to collect and make rational, logical, or profitable or efficient decisions. That I think I get 100%, right? So we don't want a machine to just be able to say, okay, here comes a nut, put it in a bolt. Here comes a nut, put it in a bolt. Or here comes a bolt, put it in a nut, put it in a nut, right? Oh, that's not a bolt. That's a screw. So I'm going to put it here. So that differentiation, that's a level of intelligence or whatever you want to call it. Now,
But then your nut bolt screw sorter just goes, Daddy, where did I come from?
Why would he do that?
I'm just kidding. But yeah, beyond that, yes, no, it has to go beyond someone just said, I need a machine or an intelligence that can sort nuts from bolts as well as screws or other machine parts. Yeah, no, there is an assumption. Okay, I guess we disagree there. You don't think it's possible that any human being is going to say, I want to see if I
no. You misunderstand me. First of all, that's happening already, dude. So it would be silly of me to disagree with that because that's happening already, right?
So then the question of whether there's value is irrelevant. If you can agree that that's happening already, at least to some measure, then
no, it's not irrelevant. I'm telling you, these people are idiots, whether they kill us or not. You're making something that does not bring value to humanity. Just because somebody does something doesn't mean it's a good thing.
All right, it sounded like you were negating the hypothetical because why would we do that? What value is there in that? But now you're admitting that okay, people are doing that already to some extent. So let's get beyond the value part. So potentially the hypothetical is possible, plausible, right? If we're agreeing that we are taking baby steps in that direction and we're doing dumb things to program our
dolls. Have you not seen these sex dolls that like they talk, they're real, they kind of learn you. They it's almost like they're like parrots a little bit. Like they either get your name or they know how to talk to you. This is happening already. So I'm not naive to the fact that it's already happening. And but there's a profit motive in it because it's entertaining. But I just don't see the value. So the conversation you want to have is what? Is it dangerous?
No, sorry. I wanted to start at that end state. And so I don't know if we still don't agree, but to get there, to get to these dangerous places, someone has to make the mistake of programming artificial intelligence with the curiosity of being a human, right? Being a human-like intelligence. And at that point, you possibly create a consciousness. Right? This thing that just is thinking, is wondering, is questioning. And at that point, if you've got this thing that's thinking, it's wondering, it's questioning, one of the things it may question is where did we come from, right? It now just decided humanity needs to go away. The reason I'm doing it, again, is because you and I agree we don't believe that life was created. These things may end up like that also. But the truth is, and we'll know it, we know it now, if it does happen, we did create them. And I'm just philosophically imagining what that experience will be like because the answer is known, right? Maybe we'll document it and then it's not a question.
Abdul, you need to lay off the peyote, bro. Bro, you got some stanky weed over there or something, bro. That's that next level strain. Right. I don't care what they think, bro.
No, obviously, right? And we won't
No,
be
no, no,
around
but
to know,
even
you and I specifically also.
I don't know that, but more deeply, I don't give like. So we do realize that. So, oh, you know what? I just sent you a link today, and a not a theoretical biologist, a sociological biologist, or somebody, Thomas C. Watley. He's some high level scientist from somewhere, and he's talking about the experiments that they did on rats to examine like connection between a offspring and their mother, the innate connection or yearning or whatever you want to call it. And they're doing these experiments, and it's like, yeah, obviously we can't do this to humans, so we do it to rats. That is a living breathing organism. So if humanity is comfortable doing experiments on rats and rabbits and frogs and everything else for cosmetics and food and vitamins and steroids and all that other good stuff, I don't know why we wouldn't have a problem smashing these fucking robots just because they can think good. So if you think there's like a dilemma, I'm not sure if that's the conversation you're trying to have, but like,
No, no. The first question, it's. I guess it's already over. We can we can close that one out. It was just a philosophical ponderance of the idea of thinking about origin, right? So humans, we think about our own origin, which leads to the origin of life in general.
okay,
And people who
okay,
believe in the creator God believe that life was created, right? There's a whole story, at least in Christianity, where everything is described and you made the planet, you made this, you made that, and eventually
every
you make
religion.
man.
Don't say Christianity. Say every religion because it's literally every religion. But go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just talking about the specific creation story in Genesis, is where I was going, right? And so they have all these details like, oh, perfect. We know it. We know exactly where life came from. And people who don't believe in creation as life's origin believe in the evolution of life with no real assertion about how life began, right? We just understand that life evolved. And so I'm just imagining, right? So there will be this case where a new life form, I don't know if you could call it life, I guess that we'd also have to define that, and whether sentient machinery or sentient or artificially intelligent machinery could be considered life. They will have an origin story. We'll know it, right? Humans created artificial intelligence in machinery and computing, and eventually there are these things. The question is, I'm just wondering, like, would they know? Would they know? Yeah, oh yeah, so and so. Here was the other fascinating thing that we went to, or the kind of divergence in the rabbit hole. Even if that happens, right, we'll know that we created artificial intelligence. It won't happen that we created one robot being that destroyed all of humanity, right? Someone had programmed a Roomba, someone had programmed like fraud detection, artificial intelligence in the computers in banks, someone had programmed whatever it is, facial recognition. Someone had made the Atlas robot. Someone put a gun on the dog robot's back, right? All of these different things happen. So each of those individual robots have different origin stories. It'll all eventually be humans created all these things. But again, I'm just wondering this in this imagined state, like, what is that like when you have machinery that can think, that can wonder, that is curious? Will they wonder? Will they have documented?
Right, but again,
It's irrelevant. It's
no, no,
almost
no, no,
rhetorical. Like,
no,
there's no answer
absolutely,
to it.
absolutely. That's fine, and I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole with you, feet away from you. But it's, I think one of the problems here is that you're making them human, as if once we program them, they're going to turn into us. Right? That curiosity that you're talking about, you don't see that in animals. I'm sorry, that's not true. I think we see it to some extent with apes, right? Chimpanzees, bonobos, maybe gorillas, all right? orangutans, orangutans, but I think you are, and, and it's not erroneously, but because we don't really know. This is super hypothetical, but I think you are 100% projecting humanity onto them. And once that happens, like really, we're just programming them, which is why I don't know if I'll ever see them as sentient because they truly don't have the free will that I think we have, right? Because they're just mimicking what we've told them to mimic, right? If they think about an origin story, that is not something that any rational being should even give a shit about,
including humans.
including humans. Absolutely. It's dumb to think about origins. Once you realize that human beings are 300,000 years old, and the Earth is 4 billion years old, and the universe, to the best of our knowledge, is 14 or 13 billion years old, you sound dumb wasting your time trying to figure that shit out. Because what do you benefit from it? What do you benefit to know that the first woman wasn't Eve, her name was Dorothy, and she was left handed, and the first guy was a loser enough to play foosball? Like, you don't get anything from that. Not scientifically, not biologically, not theoretically. Like, you don't gain anything from knowing, oh, the universe really started 17 billion years ago, and it was mostly hydrogen. Well, actually, it is mostly hydrogen, but it was really mostly iron instead of hydrogen. Because what science is doing is looking at the universe as it is today and how it impacts us, and then trying to make sure that we can get in front of asteroids, low oxygen, understanding carbon dioxide, understanding how to manipulate genetics so that our corn is edible and our strawberries are bigger and our bananas or whatever don't have the seeds in them. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff where people take for granted. Like that's the stuff that I think is useful, but the origin stuff is dumb. And but the reason you're thinking about it is because it's so intrinsic to humanity. I'm not saying that humanity doesn't have it in our cultural DNA. I'm going to call it the cultural DNA, not our real
Using DNA figuratively.
figuratively.
Yeah.
It's in our cultural just programming, right? Of indoctrination. Like, hey, there's a higher being, or it's there's value in thinking about a higher being. There's value in feeling that you're not that there's something bigger than you or whatever. Um, but as it pertains to these robots, I think once again, I'm just going to repeat. It sounds like your assessment of them or your expectation of them is really just them being metal humans.
Yeah, and again, I think that comes from big. There's so many assumptions in this chain, right? Like we don't know that that hypothetical is going to happen. It was just a curiosity because one of the assumptions is, all right, if it's humans doing the programming to make this artificial intelligence as curious as humanity, we're obviously doing it with our biases. And if we're curious as human beings and our origin story is one of our curiosities, like, we may end up programming that into this, you know, whatever, this fleet of machinery that destroys humanity. Anyway, all right, so let's wrap up that hypothetical because, yes, it's my imagined scenario, and I'm just curious what these robots will think about their own origin story. I just thought it was interesting again because number one, I agree. You have to get there. They would have to actually be curious. They may not be. Maybe we create things that destroy us and we don't program them with the curiosity to think about their own origin. But
Well, no. I don't think that's an option. I think the cat is out of the bag, and what you said is 100% guaranteed.
no. That's not where I'm going. Sorry, I'm just closing out my hypothetical. I was just saying it was interesting to me because they will have had all the different types of robots or machinery or programming or artificial intelligence. They'll each have had different origin stories. And so it's just a weird circumstance, right? Could you imagine? It would almost be like if everyone who held a religious belief about a creator was right and everyone had their own creator god. That's what this hypothetical would end up being like, right? There would be multiple whatever types of machinery kinds as what's his name? I forgot his name already. The Way of the Master guy, that Australian dude. Is it Ray Combs, the banana guy?
Ray Comfort.
Comfort, thank you. Um, yeah, right. So he's big on the whole. There's not evolution. There's kinds, and you have just things that are different kind or adaptations of different kinds. Um,
No, that's you're thinking about the other dude. Not Ken Ham, but
Hovind.
Ken Hovind.
I
He's
thought Comfort did it as well. But anyway, whatever. So I'm struggling for words for these different types of machinery. I was using kinds as tongue in cheek, but and they would each have their own different origin story. It doesn't matter. The hypothetical, we closed it. Where I want to go now, so you're agreeing, you said it again, this is going to happen, and you're willing to put a timeline on it. What could we do, if anything, to stop it? Or what would you do, right? Like your vote, right? You're talking about caring about issues like this enough where we do something, or at least talk about it. What do you think in your mind is the best way to prevent this from happening?
60% of the population not to be retarded.
I'm talking about machinery in general taking over, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think because so many people are lazy and they value the novelty of technology and making life easier and just so fun, we don't look at, as humans, this version of humanity. The vast majority of us don't look at this as how pragmatic is this, how efficient is this, how valuable is this, how wholesome is this. Like, what is the true value to humanity for this? One example is Instagram, right? Instagram brings almost very little value other than commerce, right? They're selling ad space because people are glued to their phones, and now they're just making a shit ton of money. So people are on the internet making a shit ton of money, and now that's the new just way to make money. So
It is a new way to make money.
it is a new way, but what were those people doing before? These aren't just homeless people doing this, right? If it was homeless people taking over this space, awesome. But that, and I just think society in general, and to answer your question, I don't know what can be done. And I really don't think anything can be done. I think humanity is just long gone. My genuine belief is that humanity is long gone. We do not have the mental fortitude. We are lazy, and I think we're spoiled or just kind of petulant when it comes to technology is the answer to everything. So everything just needs to be easier and faster and more fun. The fact that things have to be fun now and convenient, um, you just incentivizing corporations to make us dumb, fat, and happy.
So where do you draw the line with convenience? Because I had an interesting conversation with someone years ago about self-checkout lines at supermarkets or stores. And they're like, you know what? I don't even use a self-checkout. I just don't like it. And it was almost in principle that like jobs were being lost because self-checkout lines were created. And I bristled at that. I was like, no, that's crazy, right? There'll be other things to do. And I think it's an incredible convenience. And I like the idea. I happen to use a self-checkout line almost all the time if I can. Um,
You're a robot.
I get to talk to my people.
I agree with
And
you.
how's it going? How are the kids?
No, you just put your finger in it and it just interfaces. Like you don't even talk. You just
But
So I agree with you. I think that the truth of the matter is you'll always need people because there'll always be issues. That coupon doesn't work and my card is being funny. So you'll always have one or two cashiers. But I'm cool with self-checkout lounge. And self-checkout lounge have been like curtailed a little bit because people can cheat and steal at self-checkouts a little bit in certain ways. So you always really want people involved. There'll always be people involved, I think. But there's nothing wrong with that, especially if the people who lost their job as a cashier there are other opportunities to do something that's wholesome for the environment, that is going to bring true value to whether or not kids are better educated, they're more safe in their environments, whether so what education, food production, instead of just eating, like we're like people are really getting into this, just eating synthetic foods or less wholesome foods or more processed foods. Like, there's a way to make society healthier, and then there would be more jobs, right? Because it would be harder to do that, right? Process is a machine, but if you don't do it by machine, you get people just growing foods and people eat fresher foods and whatever, and that's more work, but you would have more people to do that work. And you have more people to do that work, they're getting jobs, possibly better paying jobs, and then the people who are partaking in that food, for this one particular siloed example, are also healthier. So healthcare is not as expensive and you're not as sick. And I think it's an exponential benefit to society if we just find more efficient ways to use human capital, human labor, to do things that truly benefit society. And if it's just convenience, so yes, that is one convenience. But like I said, I mean, monetizing Instagram and YouTube the way it is now, where Logan Paul is a millionaire. Like, you know how many millionaires there are from just Instagram and Twitter and all that other shit, where they're just getting whatever it is, subscribers and likes and ad revenue and all that other good shit. Like, that doesn't bring value to society. But that's
I
a
think
big.
there's I think there's a discussion to be had there. I don't like the influencer culture. I shouldn't say I don't like the influencer culture.
It's not that I don't like it. I just think it doesn't bring value. I mean, you can do it. I'm not saying it's morally wrong.
I think that's an opinion, though, and I share your opinion about the particular examples you're raising. I'm not a fan of that weird Logan Paul type culture, this just crazy reality type. Uh,
It's like Jackass on steroids.
yeah, right. All of that stuff, I agree with you. But the if I'm playing devil's advocate, the argument is that that's just entertainment, right? It's not entertainment that entertains you and I, but it's entertainment that people consume. And so if you go there, I almost think it's slippery slope where you say, like, is all entertainment bad, right? Is any television bad? What is acting worth? What value is that providing, right?
Agreed. And bro, this is not me saying these people shouldn't do this. This is me telling you that the reason society is fucked up is because so many people do it.